We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 23, verses 1 through 11, with a special focus on verse 7. So, should we just go around and read the translations? Yes. The special focus on 7.
Maitreya continued, after the departure of her parents, the chaste woman Devahuti, who could understand the desires of her husband, served him constantly with great love, as Bhavani, the wife of Lord Shiva, serves her husband.
O Vandura, Devanta Hunti served her husband with intimacy and great respect, with control of the senses, with love, and with sweet words.
Verse 3. "23. Oh, okay. 23. Working sanely and diligently, she pleased her very powerful husband, giving up all lust, pride, envy, greed, sinful activities, and vanity.
The daughter of Manu, who was fully devoted to her husband, looked upon him as greater even than Providence. Thus she expected great blessings from him. Having served him for so long, she grew weak and emaciated due to her religious observances. Seeing her condition, Kardama, the foremost of celestial sages, was overcome with compassion and spoke to her in a voice choked with great love.
Kardama Muni said, O respectful daughter of Swayambhava Manu, today I am very much pleased with you for your great devotion and most excellent loving service. Since the body is so dear to embodied beings, I'm astonished that you've neglected your own body to use it on my behalf.
Kardama Muni continued, I have achieved the blessings of the Lord in discharging my own religious life of austerity, meditation, and Krishna consciousness. Although you have not yet experienced these achievements, which are free from fear and lamentation, I shall offer them all to you because you are engaged in my service. Now just look at them. I am giving you the transcendental vision to see how nice they are.
No way. No.
Just look at it.
The Muni continued, what is the use of enjoyments other than the Lord's grace? All material achievements are subject to be annihilated simply by the movement of the eyebrows of Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By your principles of devotion to your husband, you have achieved and can enjoy transcendental gifts very rarely obtained by persons proud of aristocracy. I can't even do it, what he said, and material positions.
Upon hearing the speaking of her husband, who excelled in knowledge of all kinds of transcendental science, innocent Devahuti was very satisfied. Her smiling face shining with a slightly bashful glance, she spoke in a choked voice because of great humility and love.
Sri Devahuti said, my dear husband, O best of the Brahmins, I know that you have achieved perfection and are the master of all the infallible mystic powers, because you are under the protection of Yoga Maya, the transcendental nature. But you once made a promise that our bodily union should now fulfill, since children are a great quality for a chaste woman who has a glorious husband.
excited emotion for you. Therefore, kindly make what arrangements must be made according to the scriptures, so that my skinny body, how do you say? Emaciated, thank you, through unsatisfied passion, may be rendered fit for you. Although, my lord, please think of a suitable house for this purpose.
Okay, we go back to verse 7. ये मे स्वधर्मनिरतस्य तपः समाधि विद्यात्मयोगविजित भगवत्प्रसादः तान् एव ते मदनुसेवनया वरुद्धान् दृष्टिं प्रपश्य वितरामि अभयानुशोकान् Let's recite it. Yea, those which may, by me, Swadharma, own religious life, Niratasya, fully occupied with, Tapaha, in austerity, Samadhi, in meditation, Vidya, in Krishna consciousness, Atma Yoga, by fixing the mind, Vijitaha, achieved, Bhagavat Prasadaha, the blessings of the Lord, Tan, them, Eva, even, Te, by you, Mat, to me, Anu Sevanaya, by devoted service, Avaruthan, obtained, Drishtim, transcendental vibration, as a vision, Prapasya, just see, Vitarami, I am giving, Abhayan, which are free from fear, Ashokan, which are free from lamentation. Kardama Muni continued, I have achieved the blessings of the Lord in discharging my own religious life of austerity, meditation, and Krishna consciousness. Although you have not yet experienced these achievements, which are free from fear and lamentation, I shall offer them all to you because you are engaged in my service. Now just look at them. I'm giving you transcendental vision to see how nice they are. Purport. Devahuti engaged only in the service of Kardama Muni. She was not supposed to be so advanced in austerity, ecstasy, meditation, or Krishna consciousness, but imperceptibly She was sharing her husband's achievements, which she could neither see nor experience. Automatically, she achieved these graces of the Lord. What are the graces of the Lord? It is stated here that the graces of the Lord are abhaya, free from fearfulness. In the material world, if someone accumulates $1 million, he is always full of fear because he is always thinking, what if the money is lost? But the benediction of the Lord, Bhagavat Prasada, is never to be lost. It's simply to be enjoyed. There is no question of loss. One simply gains and enjoys gaining. Bhagavad Gita also confirms this. When one achieves the grace of the Lord, the result is that sarva dukkhani, all distresses are destroyed. When situated in the transcendental position, one is freed from the two kinds of material diseases, hankering and lamentation. This is also stated in the Bhagavad Gita. After devotional life begins, we can achieve the full result of love of Godhead. Love of Krishna is the highest perfection of Bhagavat Prasada, or divine mercy. This transcendental achievement is so greatly valuable that no material happiness can compare to it. Prabodhananda Saraswati said that if one achieves the grace of Lord Chaitanya, he becomes so great that he does not even care a fig even for the demigods. He thinks of monism as hellish, and for him the perfection of controlling the senses is as easy as anything. Heavenly pleasures become to him no more than stories. Actually, there is no comparison between material happiness and transcendental happiness. By the grace of Kardama Muni, Devahuti experienced actual realization simply by serving. We get a similar example in the life of Narada Muni. In his previous life, Narada was a maidservant's son, but his mother was engaged in the service of great devotees. He got opportunity to serve the devotees, and simply by eating the remnants of their foodstuff and carrying out their orders, he became so elevated that in his next life he became the great personality Narada. For spiritual achievement, the easiest path is to take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master and serve him with heart and soul. That is the secret of success. As stated by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his 8 stanzas of prayer to the spiritual master, Yashya Prasadat Bhagavat Prasadaha. By serving or receiving the grace of the spiritual master, one receives the grace of the Supreme Lord. By serving her devotee husband Kardama Muni, Devahuti shared in his achievements. Similarly, a sincere disciple, simply by serving a bona fide spiritual master, can achieve all the mercy of the Lord and the spiritual master simultaneously. There is a lot to unpack in this verse, and Shruti Sagar Prabhu sent me a note saying I should speak about uh, men and women psychology, and I think totally unqualified to speak on that. You know, all I know is that men are from Mars and women are from Venus. So this is what I hope to do. I hope to open a conversation up. That there are. I don't want this to get into a full-blown Krishna house gender war, but I think that each one of us are made differently, and the gender that we identify with plays a huge role in how we approach our Krishna consciousness. And so I wanted to open up the floor to have a conversation with all of you, uh, reflecting on what you think is the main difference between being in a male body and a female body, and how can we use that difference in serving Krishna well, right? Because at the end of the day, if there is one thing we can know just by observing nature, is that God loves variety. There is a lot of variety everywhere, right? And out there in the world, there is this big question, are there only two genders? How many of you have had that question? Or at least heard that question? Are there only two genders? On campus, right? um, in the Sanskrit language, the language in which the Srimad Bhagavatam is written, there are at least three genders. So there is in any noun, there is male, there is female, and then there is neutral. Right? And that neutral has its own spectrum. And so some of the things that people are fighting over in the world right now are bygone conclusions in the Mahabharata, Srimad Bhagavatam, our ancient scriptures. Right? In the Srimad Bhagavatam, we see that, or the Mahabharata, we see Arjuna was dressing up as a woman for a year. I forget her name. What was her name? You remember? And she played the role of a woman so well, nobody was able to say for a year that this is actually a man. Right? And then later in the Srimad Bhagavatam, you have the example of King Sudyumna. King Sudyumna was a male, but he would become a woman from time to time. Right? And there is the story of Amba, Ambika, and Ambalika. You know, there are the three sisters. How many of you know the story of Amba, Ambika, and Ambalika? Okay, so we warrants a little detail. The word Amba means mother, right? Ambika means little mother, and Ambalika means very little mother. The three ladies who was having a Swayambara Sabha. And so if you were ever curious about dating in the Vedic world, there were at least 8 varieties of marriage. What we consider marriage, like, going to a court, signing the paper in front of a magistrate, and the magistrate, says, or you go to a church, and, the priest says, I pronounce you husband and wife. If you are doing a Vedic version, you light a fire, walk around it 7 times, all this kind of stuff, right? But in the Vedic world or the Puranic world, marriage doesn't happen necessarily in front of a register or a court, or there are different kinds of marriages. Sometimes a father gives her daughter in hand in marriage. Sometimes the daughter chooses. Sometimes she may decide to run away. Eloping is considered a form of marriage. Yes, there are 8 kinds. So, for example, when Arjuna was visiting Krishna one time, he could barely keep his eyes off Krishna's sister, Subhadra. And Krishna is like, dude, don't go there. And Arjuna says, I don't know what I can do. And Krishna's brother Balaram is like, our sister is supposed to get married to Duryodhana. He is the king of the Kurus. He's become a very powerful alliance. And then Krishna noticed that Subhadra was also not able to keep her eyes off Arjuna. So he says, there's something going on here, right? And so then Krishna told Arjuna that, hey, there is no way, right? She's above your league. My brother's involved. There is no way this is happening. Just take her and run. Just go. And you would think Krishna and Balaram are on the same page on everything, right? No. Krishna says, just run. And Arjuna says, very good idea. And he takes Subhadra and he just runs. And Balaram is like, hey, what the heck is happening here? She's supposed to get married to Duryodhana. And Krishna says, no, they're in love. Just let them go. And that kidnapping is considered a marriage. When the girl is, and Krishna married who? So that's considered a form of vivaha. The word vivaha in Sanskrit doesn't necessarily translate into marriage, but it is what it is, right? And then there are other forms, right? There are kinds of marriage that you should never engage in, like kidnapping without consent. That's considered marriage in Tamagun. Rakshasa is the marriage of demons, right? So there are various kinds of marriages, and my original point was about differences in male and female psychology in Vedic period, marriage looks very different. Everybody has to be married unless they are an ascetic, right? And in society, many people would become brahmacharis, they would wear saffron. A lot of people who would go out, men go out for war. And therefore, in the Bhagavatam, we sometimes find that those who could manage it would marry multiple wives. Like Vasudeva had, I think, 27, right? Krishna married 16,000 in on top of 108. And so, he, he kind of set the record. I don't think anybody else could manage something like that. So okay, I'll stop there and just open up the floor to have a conversation. What do you think is a major difference between the way men think and women think, and how do you think that particular difference could be used to serve the Lord? Yes.
I've heard that I think I heard Prabhupada, I think I read this, that women sometimes have an easier time in religious life because they naturally just submit easier. And Prabhupada said, I don't know if he said this actually, I would scratch that. But if you go to a church, like a Christian church, you'll often find that the women are more devotional and that the men are almost dragged along sometimes. And yeah, so maybe there's something about being female that helps surrender more. Yes or no?
Prabhupada did say that,
Okay.
that naturally inclined to piety, right? In his early days too, most of the programs, mostly women. Thank you for that point. Others, I saw a couple of hands go up. Yes, you have the microphone, Asa.
I think at times we confuse gender, and gender is woman and man, and sex as a species is female and male. And when you bring it even down to a sub level, it's just we're all just energy of masculine and feminine energy. Therefore, we get caught up in the times that these physical bodies don't exist. This material world doesn't exist because everything is just energy. So our consciousness is formed of different energies that is considered feminine and masculine, where one is pertainly dominant in the mind, which is majority man, and one is one of intuition and feeling, which is the woman.
Mm. I think that hits a very deep philosophical point. In this culture, in this tradition, in the metaphysics of the Bhagavatam, you have two ideas, two Sanskrit words. One is called Purusha, one is called Prakriti. It comes from the Sankhyan philosophy. Purusha means predominator, Prakriti is predominated. And so it doesn't matter whether one is in a female body or a male body, the predominator is Purusha and the predominated is Prakriti. So it's a form of, Prakriti is material energy, Purusha is spiritual energy. So that's really what exists at the heart of reality. But it manifests itself in so many different ways that we tend to think of this, we tend to go with the externals. And thank you so much for that point. I saw one hand go up here.
Yeah, in my experience at Krishna House, the only thing that I really seen that the guys had a need for was throwing the trash out in the big trash can.
The guys what?
That the girls needed the guys to throw the heavy trash out in the
Oh,
trash can because a
okay.
couple of them hurt their backs.
Oh,
And then they came up with the motto, "Let the men do it." And I loved it. It was actually empowering, but that kind of like let me see. I was like, okay, so girls, they need like maybe us for muscle and maybe to help with some uncomfortable things like getting rid of bugs or chasing off like creeps, or driving at night. But, aside from that, my thoughts were that another thing Srila Prabhupada said was about the right and the left arms on the body. And yeah, I was just thinking about that as like my right arm is a little bit more muscularly stronger, but otherwise like need both of them in order to do service. So
That's a great point. Thank you. I didn't want this to blow out into a full-on gender war. So, yes. There are two hands that are up.
I'm kind of bouncing off of what Jai was saying, and that is that it is true that ultimately there's no male or female. There's the living entity, part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and yet in the beginning of bhakti, we have to actually use who we are and what we have in service to the Lord, and that includes our psychophysical nature. And so there is going to be differences in how a man goes about serving and a woman goes about. I mean, basically, it might be the same in an outward way, but the psychology of it is going to be very, very different. But eventually, when one begins to experience realization of their somewhat of their swarup, their constitutional nature, that consciousness tends to disappear. Because in the spiritual world, a woman in this life may be a gopa, may be a cowherd boy, and vice versa. So, but you have to use what you have now. You have to use the illusion in order to overcome the illusion. You have to dovetail who you are and what you have.
Thank you. That's why I asked the question. That, what do you think is the difference, and how could we use that in Krishna's service? Thank you. Yes.
Well, women are more nurturing, so they're going to be good. I don't know. I'm gonna just say it. They're good or better at nurturing. So they'd be nicer to the deities when they take care of the deities. Yeah.
Well, you can have exceptions both ways. Yes, and then we'll get back.
Prabhupada said we should all just consider ourselves like feminine, and Krishna is the only Purusha.
That's correct. That at the end of the day, we are Prakriti, and Krishna is the only Purusha. Yes, enjoyer.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know where I've seen it, but it was in it might have been in the Bhagavad Gita or one of the books, but where they talk about that one of the supreme types of personalities is somebody that has both male and feminine, both masculine and feminine qualities. And I've noticed, growing up and stuff like that, I used to get picked on sometimes because of my feminine qualities as well, because I actually I'm very in touch with my intuition and with my emotions and such, and so I'm a more emotional person. So my question is like for somebody who's got both ends of the scales and they can see it from both perspectives. Like I'm not super masculine where it's like, I think that I'm like super tough and I gotta like put on this fake facade or fake character. I've always been more real, and so is that normal? To what do you think about
You asking
both?
me if that is
Yeah.
normal?
Yeah.
If Krishna has given it to you, it's still completely normal.
Okay.
I think so, but somebody might differ.
Cool.
We had a couple of hands behind you. Go for it. Yes.
I think Lao Tzu said a vase is only important because of the empty space on the inside. So the man being the vase and then the woman being like the womb, the empty space is what holds space for creation itself. And like she mentioned, that we're all female holding space for Krishna to experience this. So I think it's important to have female friends and observe how they interact, learn about Krishna's qualities, and then be able to fluctuate in any given situation. Like, oh, it calls for me to be more gentle, or now I need to be this, or now I need to be this. But then Krishna does love variety, where it's just being able to balance those scales is tricky because we're overtaken by emotion. But learning more about this and then living in a community, we're all together the Supreme Personality. So sometimes women do stuff and sometimes men do stuff. I'll see Carmen, she's like helping us load the trucks, like throwing stuff around. It's like, oh, you're in the boys' crew now. Like, welcome, you know? So it's like we all have that inside of us, but it just being the maintainer and balancing that is very difficult because we're just overtaken.
Yes, Prabhu. We keep remembering Gopalito.
Yeah, I always use both my sisters as examples. Neither one of them are really very interested in Krishna consciousness, and one of them is actually offensive. But when they both got married and they both had very successful careers, college graduates. One sister was a lawyer for 20 years. Now she's selling real estate. My other sister, her first job back to work after raising children was, 6 figures. This is like 10 or 15 years ago. But when they both got married and had children, they both would have rather been home taking care of the children. So we're different physically, we're different psychologically, and we have different roles. That's my observing my sisters.
So in this world, there are clear psychophysical differences. That's one point we have. Being either can be an asset, right? And Krishna, actually, Advaita Acharya Prabhu said this in a few Bhagavatam classes back, or some one on Friday program, that at the end of the day, practically every experience that we're going through is designed for our growth. And so in this lifetime, at this juncture, whatever body would help our inner life grow and come close, can help us come closer to Krishna, that's the kind of body that we get, right? And if it's just to kind of go back to that original idea that we were talking about, that in Vedic culture, it's not just black and white, there is a lot more variety. In relation to Krishna, we are all subordinates. In that sense, Krishna is Purusha, we are all Prakriti. But in service to Krishna, some people assume a masculine nature, some people assume a feminine nature. So Krishna's father, Nanda Maharaj, is serving as a male. Krishna's friends are serving as males. And Krishna has his girlfriends. Different people function in Krishna's leelas differently to give him pleasure, right? Their gender identities doesn't become either an obstacle or a prerequisite to serving Krishna. It is a secondary, kind of sign that just colors the way we approach Krishna. Otherwise, it has no particular relevance. Now, having said that, I just wanted to kind of quickly look at today's verse where Gardama Muni says that, hey, I have something that you don't have, and I'm going to give it to you, transcendental vision. And Srila Prabhupada explains that, what is the transcendental vision? It is free from fear and lamentation. Right? And think about it, whether we are in a male body or in a female body, we are both subject to at least those two things in this world. There is fear and there is lamentation. Right? And Kardama Muni gives Devahuti a different vantage point that, in the material world, they are male and female. And the passage that we are reading, kind of again shows that Devahuti is actually proposing Kardama Muni to have a child. That's what she wants. She wants a house and she wants a baby, right? But she has her way of expressing it. But even before she gets to that topic, what does Kardama Muni do? He said, here is a way you can look at the world which is free from fear and lamentation. And that is what Prabhupada calls Bhagavat Prasad or divine mercy. Is that in any way, shape, or form dependent on one's gender? That's the point of this verse. Okay, we are done. Questions and answers. Any questions, any particular realizations you have on this section? Yes. Otherwise, I'll start telling stories from Krishna Lila and Gaur Lila.
I almost prefer that. That sounds wonderful.
Yes.
But that fear that's being spoken of here, and the lamentation and the hankering that's mentioned in the purport, is based upon consciousness or seeing your identity as being linked with the body.
Yes.
So even though I'm in a particular body and I must use that in Krishna's service, the goal is to become free from bodily identification eventually.
Yes.
So we don't want to identify with our form. We want to use it in service.
Yes. Very true. I had one more hand. So one more hand.
I had a question. There was somewhere mentioned Devahuti did not have any. It's just I think the first paragraph of the purport. She did not have transcendental vision, like you said, but she got the results of like whatever her husband did, like something like that. Could you explain like what that meant?
Well, one of the reasons they match horoscopes in the Vedic tradition is to see a map of people's karma. And, there is a particular assumption behind why and how they explain people come together in a relationship. That isn't, think about it. I'm taking a long-winded answer, but I'll get to the point. That, say, for example, you and I visit our families in India from time to time, right? There are 1.4 billion people in India, but we go through the austerity of making that, like 30-hour door-to-door trip to be with just 3 or 4 souls that we hold very dear to our heart, right? So essentially what our Shastras tell us is that if you have certain karma to burn out with certain living entities, if you have certain attraction towards them, no matter where they are in the universe, you'll go find them and be right? It is not a coincidence that all of us sitting here in this room are here at this point in time. It is the Lord's arrangement. I mean, this universe is pretty big. As I keep saying, if there was no other forms of life out there, it would be a total wasted real estate. Right? And you think about it, inside your gut right now, there are colonies of bacteria that think that we are a civilization. They're proud of it. And that they just grow with the food you take and they go out with the flush. It happens every day. Yeah, it's for a whole lifetime for them, right? So time based on where you are in the universe, whether it's inside your gut or in a human form or some other planet somewhere, you're experiencing time in your life in some form. Fear and lamentation is going to be a part of it, right? And so we end up attracting souls in our lives with whom we have some balance to sort. Right? Especially in marriage, sometimes marriages can turn out very well. Sometimes marriages can go south. George Bernard Shaw said, marriages where the man wants to go north, the woman wants to go south, and they end up going east. Right? It doesn't work out in anybody's favor. Why did they go east? It's because they had some karma to burn. That's why they came together, right? And once you come together, then the man or the woman might have, one of them is going to have a worse karma. Some things are going to go wrong, at least in one of their lives. That's why in Christian marriages, they say, till death do us part, in sickness or in health, right? Because when things go wrong, when things go south, you're going to stick it out. And that depends on, what kind of karma you're sharing. And that depends, why are you with this particular person in this point in this lifetime? Well, you had that thing to burn. Similarly, one of the partners is going to have it better. And the person who's having it worse is going to enjoy the fruits of the person who's having it better because they are connected. And so that's what's happening between Devahuti and Kartama Muni. That They wished to be the parents of the Lord. Kapila Devi is going to come through all of this. That's why the Bhagavatam is describing it, right? It's describing the scenes before Kapila Dev appears. And then Prabhupada says that, one of them is a great yogi. He's all these mystical powers. One of them, I mean, there is a verse, I think, somewhere around here, where Devahuti is playing with a ball on a terrace, and some demigod is flying on a plane, hanging low, and looks at her and almost falls off his plane. She's so gorgeous, right? So she's got the looks, she's got the charm, she's got she knows how to get to her husband's heart, because the Bhagavatam also points out that yogis can be very hard-hearted. They are so strong in their tapasya, they don't melt very quickly, right? Especially to the charm of somebody from the opposite gender. So, but she knows how to work around that as well. So each of them has something different, right? And they are able to, they're a great match. Was I able to answer your question? Any other questions? Yes.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much for your class, bro. When you were mentioning about the gender wars, would it be safe to say that they exist within us?
Gender wars exist within us.
Yeah, and also outside of us.
Any conflict exists in the mind first.
Would it be safe to say that it exists within and without due to
absolutely.
Due to the lack of appreciation for
because of a lack of perception of reality.
And lack of appreciation of the other one
that's there, but also, I mean, at this point, RKT charge, we are completely oblivious to what is actual reality. We cannot know it with, university degrees, reading hundreds of books, going to seminars. You can't realize who you are by doing that. We are just stuck here. The only way we realize is that spiritual master Krishna just opens our eyes one day, and we go like, aha. We suddenly realize that we are this machine that's being controlled by an invisible something that is actually us, that doesn't have gender, that doesn't have age, right? And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada points out that there is a difference between machi. Machi means fly. You know what a fly is? Like, when they go and sit on the poop, right? Momachi is bee. They also go buzz, but they never sit on the poop. They sit on the flower. Right? I translate machi and momachi culturally as fly and butterfly. Isn't it in Bangla? It kind of there is that poetry. Flies and butterflies. Where do butterflies sit? Will you ever see a butterfly, chew out of everything in nature, just fly and suddenly sit on a pile of poop? No. Because butterfly is naturally attracted to nectar, and flies are naturally attracted to shit. Sorry, pardon my Sanskrit. At one point, you want me to be pure? Okay, I will be. In India, somebody was so upset that cow dung could be used for different things like. So I said, if you don't like cow dung, just call it Stercus bovis. It's the Latin for cow dung. Just gives it a nice polish. But flies would sit on Stercus. That's the difference. And so a lot of what we attract ourselves to is the stuff that we are projecting. Right? And once we project, once the crap is in our head, we're just gonna go and get attracted to crap. And if you cleanse that crap, then we get attracted to the nectar, right? And that's the difference between being in Krishna consciousness or not. To the extent we are in Krishna consciousness, there are things that are just going to not seem very attractive, right? Like partying doesn't seem very attractive partying in Tamil. But I mean, if you look at the program schedule, you start your day dancing. How many people start their day singing and dancing, right? And then you take some time to sit and get a little me time with God, and then you're dancing again, Guru Puja, right? And then you get a little intellectual, exercise, and then you go take prasad. Now, if you asked most of the students who live in this neighborhood to do this, they'll probably freak out. We didn't have like Krishna house, but we had something like a Krishna house when I was a student at Oxford. And that house had about 7 devotees living together, right? We would take turns to cook and do this fun community. One day, one of our neighbors came to us and said, "What do you guys do early in the morning? Not even farmers get up that early." Right? It's like 4:30 in the morning. It's like banging drums and singing and dancing. What's wrong with you guys? Right? But we know we could do it, 365 days a year and not get bored with it. This is like, I started this process. I was very fortunate to have a family where I just got this thing, but seriously started this process about 10 years. It's 1992. How many years has this been? 40, 30, 32 years. So it's quite a bit. I'm still here. What kept me here? There is a huge amount of real substance in this. And the deeper you go, the more you realize that Krishna is actually real. You just have to change your glasses to see Krishna properly. Practically everything that's happening around you is Krishna's orchestration, just gently giving you reminders how to come back home, come back to him. And gender wars are just a distraction of illusion. I mean, at the end of the day, if you think about it, sex is nature's magic to keep you trapped here. Like magicians show some magic tricks. But once you figured out what the magic trick is, the trick loses its appeal. Once you know how when you don't know what the trick is, it's like, wow, you've just broken, the laws of nature. This is amazing, right? But once you figure out what the mechanism is, it's like, oh, this? I was so gung-ho about this. And, the same thing happens with sexual attraction. That at one point you think, oh my God, this is, so, this person is my hero, right? And you go through a whole psychological process, and there are hormones involved, and 5 years later or 10 years later, it's like, what was I thinking? But then once you realize that it's actually nature's magic, nature has a way to keep you entertained and keep you stuck here, right? Keep you going in circles. She will do that. Okay? Yes, bro.
It's interesting how the sufficient appreciation will end any war.
Sufficient appreciation will
appreciation for both will end any war, including the gender war.
Absolutely.
But interestingly enough, appreciation actually also takes care of those two, lamentation and fear.
Yes, actually it does. The main reason we are here in this material world is because we have something called matsarja, or it can be translated as jealousy or envy. That, there is a material Mahamantra. We made of Hare Krishna Mahamantra is made of 3 words, Hare Krishna and Ram. There is a material Mahamantra made of 3 words. You know what that is? What about me? You keep repeating in your head, what about me, what about me, what about me, in various formats. Somebody is serving prasad, you really like the big paneer pieces, right? And you were expecting 3 and you just get 1. And you're thinking in your head, was that Krishna's plan or should I ask? Right? That's a transformation of the what about me Mahamantra. Right? And the greatest the easiest, quickest, and the simplest way to what I call the sad problem. You know what the sad problem is? Stress, anxiety, and depression. SAD, right? The quickest, easiest, simplest way to get, to 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 become an enjoyer of the sad problem is to chant the Mahamantra. What about me? Right? That is what keeps us in the material world. To the extent we are able to get out of that, we know we are progressing spiritually. So how do we know that if there is a particular devotee who's doing really well, they might have come 20 years after me and they might be doing 10 times more service as me. If I can have uh, good feelings about that person, that I can wholeheartedly bless that person and, in my heart feel charitable, that, I'll take inspiration from this person, right? That is how much progress we have made in our spiritual life. That is the test. That, to the extent we are able to give up our disappointment with others, our judgment of others, especially our envy of others, and see, oh, this person is doing so well. Krishna has given this person this particular empowerment, and I must do what I can to serve. And so here is the Krishna Lila of the day. Ready? Ready? So, in school, sometimes children run in a race and somebody wants to reach the dead, what is it called? The ribbon? The finish line first, right? And one time I was watching a movie by this British comedian called The Dictator. And there was a scene, he was running in a race and he was dictator, right? So he had two guns. So before he started the race, he like fired his own shot and then started running. And anybody who was trying to compete with him was just shooting them in their leg. He's the dictator, he has to win, right? Just shooting them in the leg, and that's how he won the race. And everybody was clapping, he won. And I was thinking that there is a similar scene in the Srimad Bhagavatam, except it's the opposite. When two of Krishna's cowherd boys are playing sports in an afternoon, Krishna is relaxing. They just had their prasad. Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes that whole scene very beautifully. Bela holo damodara aisho ekhono. What is the next line? Bhagavan dire boshi karo bhojan. So, Krishna, it's getting late. Come here. Sit down. Eat. Right? And so Krishna comes to the dining hall with all his friends. And they are laughing and joking. And you know what Krishna is doing? Krishna is sweaty. And he takes his palm and sit under his armpit and makes a farting noise. And when he's like, that noise comes, everybody goes, Haribo! They're just having a lot of fun. Bagolo baja and Haribol. In this way, they're making all kinds of weird sounds from their armpit. They're stealing each other's food. They're having a great time. Two boys, they say they are the farthest away, so the food is getting over, right? And with prasad, never be at the end. Then it is really prasad because everybody else has finished everything. Suddenly you see, okay, Prabhu, we served the dessert too much. We are out of halwa today. Right? It happens. So two boys are trying to run to see who reaches Krishna first. Just like in a race in this world. But you know what they're saying to each other? Run faster so that you may encourage me to reach quicker. Right? So when somebody is running and winning the race, you're actually encouraging him. You should reach Krishna first so that I am inspired to reach Krishna first. Who reaches Krishna first doesn't matter. That, even if I reach Krishna second, at least Krishna will laugh. We would have given him some joy. And that is the purpose of our running, not to win this stupid race. Right? So in this way, in Krishna's Leelas, nothing is there. excuse me, nothing is there for competition. Nothing is there to beat somebody up or beat somebody down. It's there, even if you're competing, it's for Krishna's pleasure. I'll finish with one lila from Srila Prabhupada. At one point, Srila Prabhupada was really fanning the spark in all of his disciples to distribute books en masse. And Tamakrishna Maharaj figured out a way to buy a set of 30 Greyhound buses. That was the Krishna house of those days. It was called the Radha Damodar Party. And each of those buses were filled with devotees. They would install a deity there. The main bus had Radha Damodar. And they would be driving on a highway on America, and everybody would be, like 40, 50 people inside the bus would be sitting and chanting, and then it was like a mobile temple. And somebody else had a party called the BBT party. Right? And there was transcendental competition. And you know what Srila Prabhupada would do? Anytime somebody would come with a report on Prabhupada, these are the number of books we sold. Prabhupada said, oh, that's great, but the other party has sold this much. He would just tell them what their competitor did, right? And then the competitor would come, try to beat Radha Damodar party, and they would come and say, how many books? Oh, Radha Damodar actually did this much. So in this way, these two parties across North America were competing with each other to sell more and more books. But at one point, this competition turned very toxic. They were fighting over people, they were fighting over numbers, they were fighting over. And Prabhupada said, no, this is not the spirit. We are going to merge these two parties, just call it the Radha Damodar party. So when there was competition for a transcendental cause, it was spiritual. The moment it became about someone's ego, then it was no longer spiritual, and Prabhupada put a stop to it. Right? Similarly, in Goloka Vrindavan, we see when people are trying to run and race and reach Krishna, it's not about the ego. It's about how much fun we're having here, right? As long as that spirit of competition is there, why not? Okay, 8:43. You have a question? Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. It was fun being here. Hare Krishna.